Chapter 9 of An English Girl's First Impressions of Burma. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Carol Fullerton Samsell at clonesoflangston.com. An English Girl's First Impressions of Burma by Beth Ellis. Chapter 9. Adventures. Quote from the HMS Pinafore. Things are seldom what they seem. Quote from Rudyard Kipling. I haven't braved any dangers, but I feel as if I knew all about it. But all this time I am wandering from the real subject of this book, i.e. myself and my adventures. And, as wandering from the straight path is an unpardonable error, it behooves me to return speedily to my subject, and recount a few of the soul-stirring incidents which befell me during some of my many bicycling expeditions alone into the depths of the jungle. This bicycling out of sight of human habitation into the depths of the jungle sounds rather a brave and fearless proceeding, so I will not correct the statement, but in parentheses, as it were, I will remark that once only did I venture more than a half mile from Remyo, and that whenever I had turned the corner of the circular road which shut out the last view of my brother's house, my heart sank, and I became a prey to the most agonizing fears. Every instant I expected a tiger to bound upon me from the jungle at the side of the road, a cobra to dart out its ugly head from the overhanging branch of a tree, or a body of dacoits to pounce down upon me and carry me off to their lair in triumph. My mind was filled with useless speculation as to whether I and my bicycle would be swifter than a panther, and with what honeyed words of wisdom I should best allay the wrath of the Burman run amuck, should fate throw one of these my way. I derived no pleasure from that lonely mile and a half of the circular road, which must be traversed before again arriving at the haunts of civilization. I never entered upon it without a shiver of nervous expectation, or left it behind without a sigh of relief. And yet I was forced by my overweening craving for adventure to ride out at every opportunity to explore this dreary waste of jungle. Like the great Tartarin of Tarasconesian memory, my Don Quixote spirit drove me to seek adventures, however gruesome, while my Sancho Panza mind ever timidly pined for home and safety. The first time my Quixotic expectations were fulfilled was one evening when I was riding later than usual. The sun had set, and the short eastern twilight was rapidly darkening into night. I was cycling along quickly, eager to reach home before being overtaken by the gathering darkness, when suddenly, on turning a corner of the road, I saw about 100 yards in front of me a long black thing, presumably a python, stretching half across the road, and curving up its huge head as though ready to attack. I do not suppose any bicycle ever stopped so abruptly as mine did at that moment, and I must confess that my descent from the machine was rapid rather than graceful. After I had sorted myself in the bicycle, I stood up, my senses somewhat steadied by the sudden contact with Mother Earth, and considered the situation. The python did not appear to have moved much, and had, apparently, as yet taken no notice of my appearance. Could it be asleep? I suppose pythons do sleep sometimes. If I turned back, behind me lay 3 miles and more of jungle-bordered road, full of endless possible dangers, which must be traversed before reaching safety. And it was growing so dark. In front, if I could but pass the python, I had but a quarter of a mile to ride, and I should be in Remyo. I felt that I positively dared not face that long dark ride back. But dare I face the python? It still made no sign of movement, but possibly it was shamming sleep. Then suddenly there came to me in my need, not a mysterious voice, but a timely recollection. It was a recollection of one of the stories told to me by the versatile policeman, a story of how he had behaved successfully under similar circumstances, except that in his case the obstacle was a leopard. I determined to follow his example. Summoning all my courage to assist me in performing this fearsome deed, I mounted my bicycle. and with beating heart and trembling limbs I rode straight towards the reptile, ringing my bell, shouting, and making as much noise and commotion as possible. Straight on I rode, almost desperate with fear, and then suddenly I ceased to shout. I stayed my reckless pace and finished my ride in gloomy silence, for on nearer inspection the mighty python, the object of all my terror, turned out to be nothing more alarming than the fallen branch of a tree. Another adventure, which but for my habitual prudence might have ended more seriously, befell me at almost exactly the same spot, but in the daytime. I was riding along cheerfully, feeling particularly brave, when suddenly I beheld about a quarter of a mile in front of me 3 strange beasts. They rather resembled to my mind rhinoceri, but each had 2 horns. I had never seen them before, I have no particular desire ever to see them again, and I had not the least notion what they might be, whether wild beasts of the jungle or tame household pets, but their personal appearance rather suggested the former. I dismounted hastily and considered the matter. I did not wish to appear cowardly, even to my bicycle. On the other hand, being of a peaceful nature, I had no desire to enter into a hand-to-hoof struggle with 3 utterly unknown quantities. On they came, usurping the whole of the road, with a sort of push me aside if you dare look about them, which I found particularly unpleasant. Their gait was rolling and pompous, but they occasionally relieved the monotony of their progress by prodding one another playfully with their horns. This engaging playfulness of disposition did not appeal to me, but I remembered the python incident and scorned my fears. I would go on and face the beasts. I remounted, looked again at the horns of the advancing animals, thought of my family and friends, and then, somehow, my bicycle seemed to turn round by itself, and I found myself speeding as quickly in the opposite direction as any record breaker who ever rode. On arriving home, I casually mentioned what I had encountered, and learned that my friends were water buffaloes, animals of the mildest disposition unless roused, but when roused most unpleasant to encounter. They have frequently been known to pick up a dog with their horns and break its bones over their backs. They can pick a mosquito off their backs with the tip of their horns. In fact, they are quite skilled in the use of the latter, and had I not luckily decided to ride in the opposite direction when I encountered these enterprising beasts, they would, doubtless, have experienced no difficulty whatever in puncturing my tire. Ostensibly their duty in this life is to draw the plough, but in reality they fulfil a far higher mission. To them, and to them only, it is given to draw contempt upon the superiority of the Anglo-Indian, to compass the fall of the mighty. For no sooner does a European appear riding in his pride by the river bed, where the water buffalo lies wallowing in the mud, than all the worst passions awake in the breast of the aforementioned water buffalo, and he is instantly aroused to anger. He leaves the delights of the mud bath and starts in pursuit of the white face, no matter who he may be. Tell it not in Gath, but the water buffalo, being no respecter of persons, has even been known to put to ignominious flight the Indian civilian and the Bombay Burman. The pursuit is long and determined, the attack almost inevitable, unless the pursued be rescued by the opportune advent of a native. For to the water buffalo the word of the Burman is law, while the word of the Anglo-Indian is a mere nothing. This then, the scorning of the great ones, would seem to be the purpose of the water buffaloes upon this earth. How are the mighty fallen, when the highest among the ruling race must trust for rescue to the interference of a 5-year-old Burman. One day, late in the afternoon, I sallied forth on my bicycle to a spot half a mile down the Mandalay road, where I had noticed a specially beautifully blossomed wild cherry tree. My intention was to rob the tree of its treasure, and bear the blossom home in triumph, to decorate our drawing room for a dinner party that evening. The place was quite deserted, so finding I could not reach the blossoms from the ground, I leant my bicycle against the tree trunk, and after much scrambling and 1 or 2 falls, I succeeded in climbing the tree, and began to gather the flowers. So absorbed was I in my twofold task of holding on to my precious perch and breaking the branches of the blossom, that I did not notice what was going on below. Imagine then to my horror and astonishment, on looking down, to find my tree surrounded by about a half dozen of the most extraordinary looking natives I had ever beheld. Their clothing was most scanty, and they were covered from head to foot with elaborate tattoo. They wore tremendously large Shan hats. Their hair was long and matted, their teeth were red with betel juice, and most of them were armed with long Burmese das. They had come silently along the road out of the jungle, and now stood in a circle round my tree, pointing, staring, and chattering vigorously in an unknown tongue. Evidently I had fallen into the hand of a band of dacoits, and, to judge by their appearance, they were gloating over their capture. It was no dream this time. I assured myself of that by a series of violent and judicious pinches. No, it was grim, very grim, earnest. Escape appeared impossible. I told them in as much strong English as I could remember to go away, but they neither understood nor heeded. I tried to recollect my Burmese, but could only remember words referring to food, and thought it better not to put that idea into their heads. They might be cannibals. I tried one or two shouts, but that made no impression on them. There seemed no hope. They still stood there, pointing and grinning savagely. They had evidently no intention of relinquishing their prey. Then, trying to smile in a nervous and conciliatory manner, I slowly descended the tree. How I longed for false teeth, a glass eye, a wooden leg, or some other modern invention, with which people in books of adventure are wont to overawe the natives who thirst for their blood. Alas, I had nothing of the sort. I could not obviously sit in the tree all night, so sadly and doubtfully I descended to throw myself on their mercy. I reached the ground and stood with my eyes shut, waiting the end. The end showed no intention of coming, so I opened my eyes and discovered to my astonishment that not I, but my bicycle, was the object of all this attention. I was to them a matter of no interest whatever, but the cycle they could not understand. Joyous with relief, I hurriedly demonstrated the workings of my bicycle to this party of, not dacoits, but most harmless woodcutters, and then mounting rode away, followed for some distance by an awestruck and admiring crowd. My fears as usual were unfounded, but the drawing room was not decorated with cherry blossom that or any other evening. It is difficult for those to whom the bicycle is now as common as blackberries, to imagine the astonishment with which the natives view the machine for the first time. In Remyo itself, bicycles are well known, but frequently on the roads I met strangers from neighbouring villages, and the astonishment and terror depicted on their faces when they beheld me riding on this unknown thing was almost laughable. They would fall back into the ditch with their mouths open, and remain staring after me as long as I was in sight. Once, I remember, I and another lady rode out to a little village in the jungle about 3 miles from Remyo. The road, a mere jungle track, was awful, but we succeeded at last in arriving at our destination. We left our cycles in the compound of the Pung Yi Kyung, and climbed a neighbouring hill to see a quaint pagoda, which crowned its top. After thoroughly examining the pagoda, and the numerous images which surround it, we returned to our cycles. What was our astonishment to find the entire population of the village assembled in the compound, all having apparently taken up their positions there, preparatory to seeing some entertainment. The head of the village approached us humbly, and, in a long speech, explained that he, evidently a travelled gentleman, had told his subordinates all about the wonderful machines we rode, yet they would not believe him. Would we, as a great condescension, mount and ride round the compound, that all might see that his words were true? Willing to oblige him, I consented at once, mounted and did a little gymkhana business. Rather cleverly, I thought, considering the rough ground. Imagine my astonishment and indignation when the whole audience became convulsed with merriment, hearty, overwhelming merriment, rolling on the ground and shrieking with laughter. I cannot explain the reason of it. I suppose they looked upon me as a sort of travelling acrobat, and their laughter was a sign of approbation of my tricks. But I was very angry. I had not gone out to Burma to become the laughing stock of ignorant natives, so I said a hasty farewell to the Thugyi, who seemed quite pleased with the reception his companions gave me, and rode out of the compound and away, followed by the amused shrieks of my audience. I would have shaken the dust of that village from my feet, but that is a difficult thing to achieve successfully on a bicycle. The Burmans are a merry folk, but methinks at times their humour carries them too far. End of chapter 9.